Start.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Down the Wrestling Rabbit Hole, the podcast where 1 minute we could be talking about Stone Cold's beer truck. 20 minutes later, we're debating whether a time-traveling gobbledygooker could win the Intercontinental title. I am, of course, your host, Howard Meat Sweats Morgan, and each week we dive headfirst into the weirdest stories, wildest matches, and the beautiful unhinged madness that makes pro wrestling what it is. And joining us, as always, is my faithful tag team partner, 1/3 of the world-famous chick magnets, Mozart Fontaine. Mozart, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, we were famous in 3 states and maybe Massachusetts.
Listen, it's the same as the Florida heavyweight champion of the world, so we'll go with it.
That's the best title ever, Superstar Grand.
So before I introduce our guest, we need to lace up our boots, grab a steel chair, which you legally cannot use, and follow us, because once we go down the rabbit hole, kayfabe is optional and logic is on vacation. But joining us tonight is, excuse me, the original Backseat Boy, Johnny Kashmere. Johnny, how you doing tonight, brother? How are you?
I'm great, man. Happy to be here. Looking forward to this rabbit hole.
Johnny.
Sure.
We are excited to have you. You know, I'm glad you could make it out, and I appreciate your time. You know, I do have a little bit of a couple standard questions, and then it usually goes off the rails shortly thereafter. But
off the rails.
I want to kind of talk about like when you first discovered pro wrestling, and then what made you decide that, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be a professional wrestler.
Something I always knew from a young age, real young age. You know, grew up with an Italian family, and my grandmom and grandpop and aunt and uncles used to watch wrestling and react to it. And I used to think to myself, like, wow, this is making my grandparents excited, you know? So it was a no-brainer. I was just going to be a wrestler. I decided at age 6, I want to say, or something. You go back and read my high school yearbook, every single person that signed it wrote, good luck being a wrestler. Hey, Mr. Wrestler, you can do it. So it was always, you know, as I sailed my ship through life, the North Star I used was pro wrestling, and I just never looked back. And now here I am all these years later, not a millionaire, broken down body, nothing to show for it. But damn it, I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. So get us into your training, and like who'd you train under, and how, you know, how did you feel after your first couple of train? I mean, obviously you just decided to keep with it, but, you know, was there ever any minute where you're like, oh, you know, I don't think I want to do this? But let's at least start with the people that trained you and broke you into
I was
business.
trained by Gary Wolf and Anthony Durante, the Pitbulls from
Pitbulls.
ECW. Yeah, they trained me. I lived in Jersey, grew up in Jersey, so I drove to events in Mount Holly where Dennis Carluzzo used to run the NWA Jersey. So Donnie B was his booker. So Donnie B put me in touch with the Pitbulls. I started training with them. And my very first day, my tryout day, I threw up. And I thought to myself, like, well, I blew it. You know, because like in the real world, when you throw up, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's like call the ambulance, you know.
Right.
But here it was like, get back in the ring and do more bumps. And I did. And apparently the Pitbulls make you bump until you puke. And then if you're willing to keep going, they know you're worth, you have it in you. So I actually passed the test while I thought I was failing, which just was a mind-numbing thing. But
Wow. I just, I mean, watching ECW, you know, and it's in its infancy and everything, I just had nightmares about the Pitbulls. Like, I never, you know, people say, I don't want to run into them in a dark alley. I don't care how bright or how wide the alley is. I never wanted to run into them guys, ever. Never.
And still to this day, Gary's a scary dude. I mean, Anthony yelled at me in training one day, and I was like, well, you know, I'm just going to dig a hole and hide in it and never come out. You know, like those guys, you know, they're tough dudes, you know, but I'm Italian. So, you know, it just felt right for me to train with them.
Nice.
That's awesome. We were chatting a little bit earlier before we hit the air, Johnny. For anybody that doesn't know, Johnny and I have a deep history. He and his late partner, the great Trent Acid, hit the scene as the Backseat Boyz, which we'll get into. But I had the pleasure of feuding with them as I teamed with Mr. Ooh La La. But Johnny, you know what was interesting is you had mentioned that when you and I were breaking in, we were cruiserweights, although we didn't necessarily wrestle that style. When you walked in and saw the size of the pit bulls, were you blown away in person? You'd probably, I mean, I imagine you'd seen them perform before you trained with them, but when you're up and close and personal, it's different, right?
It is. It really is. And, I was never the biggest guy. I met them when I was 19.
Hmm.
I was probably 182 pounds, soaking wet. So I knew immediately, like, I need to be humble because, for me to act like I belong in this business or that this business owes me anything or that I'm entitled to anything would literally be insane. So every moment I was in the wrestling business, I was thankful because I looked around and was like, one of these things is not like the other.
So which pit bull was not like the other? No, I'm just kidding.
I know, you and Mozart had some feuding going on, but I got to ask you, can you throw a drop kick that lands at least above your opponent's knee? Because that's about
For the love of
Mozart's
God,
claim to
Howard.
fame is his incredibly low drop kick.
I worked as a heel. I didn't need the drop kick.
No. Plus, all you got to do is slap your thigh. You don't even need to throw kicks anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
We
You
were just
know,
talking about that today, Mozart and I earlier. Were how
the
many
thigh slap.
thigh slaps that go on, and even as a fan watching it, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Like, just
Go
stop.
back. Let me tell you. Go back in history. All right. Watch The Rock in the
Yeah.
90s. He smacks
Uh-huh.
his own hip with every punch.
Yep.
Go back to the 80s and 70s and watch Lawler slap the other guy's side of their stomach as they punch him. Think
Hmm.
about that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll have to
The
go.
art
Okay.
has devolved though because it was so hard to catch it back in the day.
Right.
Now it's I'm starting to watch moves where that a kick is not going to make that slap sound. Anybody who's kickboxed, boxed, like I'm pretty like well versed on what sound is it going to make.
Right.
So I watch every guy, even at the highest level, like it makes that same sound, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think if you kick somebody in the head, it's making that sound, or if you kick them in the back, it's going to make a thud, right? So that's where I think it got out of hand, but that's just my
No pun
opinion.
intended. Yeah, pun intended. It got out.
Yeah, out of the hand, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
No,
Hmm.
I get it.
But
Oh,
yeah,
excuse
you're
me.
right. The trade craft of the day was really hard to catch. Um,
Well, another thing I think is I run a wrestling school now, help run a wrestling school.
mhm.
And one of the things I think that's important is ventriloquism. People laugh
Mhm.
at that, but why should wrestlers not learn basic ventriloquism? Why should they whip someone off the ropes and say clothesline with their like? How
Yeah,
about talk without moving your lips? Like
Right.
that helps your career, especially with
yeah,
high def cameras that zoom right in on you now.
yeah.
Honest to God, I was watching the Raw last week, Mozart, and it was the tag team match where Otis and what's his name went over, and there was a spot where one of the Creed brothers is coming back into the ring, and Otis is running rampant, eliminating everybody,
Hmm.
and literally from my couch through my TV, you hear him say Otis, and Otis turns around, and I'm like, "Are you like? Did I just hear that? Like I heard it from my couch." Watching it on TV, and so I'm sure all of the other hundreds of thousands of people that were between there and watching it heard it too, and I'm like, I can't believe I just saw that, and he literally turned around and he hit his move, and I'm like, oh, that was dumb.
Hurt your
That is,
feelings, huh?
and it's kind of like you say, it goes back to that ventriloquism, that the magician. I don't want to know how he saw his lady in half or how he
Hmm.
makes the rabbit disappear. I just when you say abracadabra, the rabbit just needs to be gone. I don't want to see how it's done, and I saw how it was done, and it just ruined it for me that night. I'm like, all right, I'm done. Because
You watch a movie, you don't think the guy really shot the other guy.
no, we talk about that too. Like like Mozart talked about last week. If in the middle of Die Hard, Bruce Willis is getting shot up, and he stops, saying, "Hold on, people, hold on. Listen, I'm not hurt. They're not. No,
Right.
that ruins it for me. And
Right.
I told
Right.
and I think wrestling from a fan's point of view is so simplistic. It's got to make sense, and it's got to look real. Other
Well,
than that, but how do you
let's
screw
go a
that
step
up?
further. Let's go a step further. Once
Hmm.
they came out from behind the kayfabe curtain and
Yeah.
admitted that it wasn't an athletic thing anymore, at that moment, it became art.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
So art doesn't have to be fair and athletic and, you know, timed perfectly. Art can be abstract a little bit, you know. Um, I think that taking risks is the only way you're going to get ahead in pro wrestling. If you try to be the cookie cutter pro wrestler and do everything perfect, you're
Hmm.
kind of not going to stand out from the crowd.
Right.
Try to do something different, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you look at some of the guys that are selling the most t-shirts right now in the wrestling business, some of
Hmm.
them aren't even like trying to be great wrestlers. They're just trying to be characters. They're just trying to be, larger than life persona, Hollywood stars. And to be honest with you, it's gonna make them have longer careers. So it's a good
Yeah.
thing at the end, is how I look at it for the wrestlers, because in the end, I want to see the wrestlers do well.
Right.
That's
Right.
an interesting take, John, because it's so easy as a wrestler to get down on somebody who doesn't have basic fundamentals. And I still believe that that is prerequisite, but I don't necessarily think everybody has to be the antithesis of, or not antithesis. They don't have to be the personification of perfection either. So if it's going to look a little rough, let it look rough, you know? I think the problem, as I talk to fans and people who don't know what, you and I know and we're trained, it's when it becomes very obvious that they're not touching each other, or that they're going back and forth and keep trying to cover up a segment or a spot. Um, I think that's where people really start to just be, all right, I'm going to go get a sandwich now. What are your feelings on that? Because I hear you and I love what you just said, because I've never heard it put that way. It's going to change my perspective on how I look at it now. It's an art, and I love how you put that.
And it's not just an art; it's a collaborative art.
Hmm.
So a lot of artists do their best work isolated, alone. All the
Hmm.
crazy evolution on Earth happened on deserted islands, on islands where they couldn't reach the other population. Okay, and I'm
That's
curious.
probably, yeah.
That's an artist. That's an
Hmm.
artist. Okay. Um, and I feel like now that wrestlers are starting to understand that the real goal, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I'm sorry, in
Hmm.
my opinion, the goal, if you're on national television, your goal should be, and only should be, to make the fans fall in love with you.
Hmm.
Literally fall in love with you. Okay. Now, you ask yourself, what did you do to make your wife fall in love with you or whatever? Were you perfect?
Yeah. No,
Hell no.
no,
It was
no.
the flaws that made you human. So
That's a
when
good
these
point.
wrestlers go out there and try to be perfect, it's not necessary. These fans just want to know you. That's it.
Hmm.
That's all they want. Like I felt like I was partially raised by Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby Heenan, and Vince McMahon.
Exactly.
Okay, they could do no
Hmm.
wrong. Even now with Vince being canceled, part of me is like, yeah, but he's kind of like my uncle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
I do.
that's the
Hmm.
relationship. And you know who people like Danhausen know this. People like
Hmm.
Prince Nana know
Oh
this.
yeah.
They're
Nana knows.
endearing
Hmm.
themselves to audiences. It has nothing to
Oh
do
yeah.
with pro wrestling.
That's a
That's my
great
take
point.
on
No, that's a fresh take too, because I think it is, like I said, it's so easy to get critical. Um, I trained, you're a trainer now, and when you're watching the guys and you're showing them how to do a hold and you're going over it and over it again, and it it can get frustrating. What do you find? Well, first let's back up a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to the point where you're training, right? So I met a couple of your guys a few years ago. I think you had one of your guys was in the Super 8 a couple of years ago, right?
Oh, Pat
Um,
Dynamite. Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't remember because I can't keep track of the field. It's so extensive at this point.
Yeah.
But so that's when we reconnected.
Yeah.
But which was awesome, by the way. It was great to catch up.
Likewise.
You I know a little bit of this story, but for those listeners that might not, um, and I would urge anybody to go back and find Johnny's solo work, his tag work with Trent Acid as the Backseat Boys, because we came up in an era of great, great, great tag teams. So talk a little bit about how you were connected with Trent, how the personas came about, because it was just, as you just said, the crowd just ate you guys up and loved you.
Yeah, we got very lucky. The Backstreet Boys
Hmm.
had just put out their new album, their White Album thing, and it
Yeah,
was huge. It was huge. It was so big that it was either Burger King or McDonald's. You had the Happy Meal, and you'd get a
yeah,
single. You would get a deep when they used to do have CDs. You would get an actual single of the Backstreet Boys.
right.
And one of those singles, I think it was the blue one. There was blue, red, and yellow. I think it was the blue one. Had the live version that we wanted. So we had to go buy Happy Meals to get the song.
I didn't know that.
That
That's
we were,
cool.
yeah, like that's how popular the Backstreet Boys were at the time.
Yeah,
For us to take on that persona, and to be honest with you, I already looked like Kevin Richardson in the face. Like I had the same face.
exactly right.
So I was lucky, you know.
Hmm.
And Trent had the long hair and looked
Yeah,
Trent didn't look like a Backstreet Boy, but you know what Trent looked like? He looked like a rock star.
he looked like a rock star. Exactly. It
Right. He
worked.
was like the
Hmm.
Eddie Vedder, you know,
Hmm.
the Mick Jagger,
Yeah.
you know, whereas I was more like the Chris Cornell, you know,
Oh yeah. Cornell's got the better vocal. He's the better vocalist for the record, so I vote for you.
I'm with you on that. But the fact it's funny that I had my look after Soundgarden's frontman Chris Cornell. Trent had
Hmm.
his look after Pearl Jam's frontman Eddie Vedder,
Yeah.
and both of those bands were one band before called Temple of the Dog.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
technically they were a tag team, Cornell and Vedder.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it worked
That
out.
was the first time Eddie Vedder was ever recorded professionally was with Temple of the Dog. Yeah.
So I've heard.
Yeah. But that's great. And I love it was always like a really shiny shirt that you guys would wear to the ring. You had the ring gear was real shiny. I mean, you really looked the part. And not only did you look the part, as you know, it matters too what happens bell to bell. You guys were entertaining and just I always thought it was great that you had your last name is Kashmere because I tell everybody, I was telling Howard, like few guys were as smooth as you were. So I thought that was that an intentional thing or because I mean I just had so much and I was very, very, very new, very green in those days. So I looked up to you guys. You had a reputation outside of, my hometown and my home promotion. And the fans, the fans just ate you guys up. It was really special to be in a ring. And Howard, you know this. I always said when I was trained by Glenn Osborne, Johnny, Glenn would come to the ring and scare the crap out of me. Like I'm waiting for him, and this is my trainer, the guy that I had lunch with, and I'm scared to death. He's come to the ring and he's got it all turned on. When you guys would come to the ring, it wasn't a fear. It was an awe thing. Like, wow, listen to this crowd and these guys can go. You know what I mean? Like, so it got very real when you're standing in there having to play the villain. You guys made it easy, by the way. They were not cheering for me or Mr. Ulala if you were coming out of the curtain.
You
It
know,
was an interesting dynamic.
I think it's because I used to watch All in the Family growing up, and I
Hmm.
watched Honeymooners,
Oh
and I
yeah.
watched Looney Tunes. And one thing that all three of them have in common is they telegraphed everything,
Hmm.
but you still got excited when it happened.
Yeah.
You saw it
Yeah.
coming. 100%. You saw the piano over the guy's head the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay. But when that
Exactly.
piano fell, you still went nuts. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when Trent and I went out as a tag team and started wrestling as the Backstreet Boys, in
Mhm.
my mind, I became the character who needs to get his in the end, or it doesn't
Mhm.
work. And that takes a certain level of humility. And just me saying this is non-humble, so I just blew it. But it
Hmm.
takes a certain level of humility to go out there and be the guy who's willing to get his in the end, rather than the guy who goes and gives everyone else theirs in the end.
Hmm.
Because it's a fantasy. We are literally writing like a diary entry every match. It can be anything we want it to be. So
Hmm.
most wrestlers choose they look tough and strong and beat the shit out of everybody. I'm the opposite. I choose the low road. I choose the guy to I want to make the bigger guys look good.
Hmm.
because when I got in the business, just for me to believably whip off the average wrestler into the ropes, I had to use every muscle in my body to make it look
Exactly.
like I could actually get the momentum to move this person.
Right.
Nowadays, I'm one of the bigger wrestlers on the indies.
Yeah.
Okay. I can whip them off with one arm and it looks believable now. I have still not adjusted to that. And I may never because
Hmm.
I'm so embedded in my ways now.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's a part of telling the story, what we learned to be believable, so somebody can, as you said, it became an art form once kayfabe was blown out of the water and everyone was fully aware and in on the jig that it wasn't a legitimate, non I don't like to use the word scripted, but it was a they were aware that it was that the finishes were determined, and we had the job and still do of making the people suspend that disbelief for a minute, like, whoa. And if it takes Johnny every bit of his strength to whip a guy off the rope, that's also how they get behind you and they start to love you, because that in and of itself, in a storytelling term, is a flaw, as you mentioned earlier. You're not the biggest dude in the world. You're not the most muscled, although you're always very athletic looking. But again, let's go back to your trainers. If you're just nonchalantly whip, one of the pit bulls off the rope, I think people would probably be like, would
It
that
doesn't
really
look right.
happen? Yeah, it
Right.
wouldn't. You know,
Right. Exactly. It doesn't look right.
no, it's
So
And
storytelling.
and
I
it's
want to take you to back to May, the TWA one and done. Um, you were there that night, correct?
at the arena at the
Ye-
2300. Yes. Yes.
yes.
Yes. I'm sorry.
And
Yes. I know exactly what you mean.
and you had a match that night, correct?
Yes.
So I got the 12-year-old kid in me is asking, what was it like to be in the ring with Ricky and Robert that night?
Is that who I wrestled there?
Yes, it was Ricky, Robert, and Kerry.
God, I don't even remember.
That's what happens when you're a wrestler, Howard. Like
Yeah.
fans remember stuff we would never even remotely remember.
Yeah, my biggest wrestling matches with CTE, let's be honest. Um
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was great. I enjoyed it. I'm a huge tag team guy, so I'm all about tag team wrestling. I love being a tag team specialist. So yeah, it was neat. It was pretty neat. I love that building. I love
Hmm.
No,
wrestling.
that building to me has, and I don't know what it is about it, because listen, I mean, back before they redid it, I mean, it wasn't the prettiest building, it wasn't the nicest of smelling buildings, even from a fan's point of view, but there was just something special about that building when it came to pro wrestling. There was no better show, and there could have been 100 people there or 5,000 people there. The energy would have still been the same. I mean, that building is just to me, just a very, very special building. When you talk about iconic places that wrestling has been held at.
I mean, my wrestling school was there for a couple years, and we ran our events there. Pro Wrestling Unplugged ran the majority of our events in the history of our company at that building, at that arena. I feel like it's home when I walk in there now. Can you imagine what it feels like to the ECW guys that built that building for us? I mean,
Yeah.
that building, I would have nowhere to wrestle if it wasn't for all those guys. So, every time any independent wrestler gets in that ring in that building, honestly, like they should take a second to just sort of close their eyes and say thank you. You know what I mean? Because we owe a lot to that whole generation ahead of me, the Gary Wolfs and, the Tommy Dreamers and Ravens. And oh my God, where would we even be without all that?
Yeah, that is. I mean, when you talk about iconic type things, I mean that building and that whole movement. I mean, and listen, it wasn't for everybody, but I enjoyed watching it. I still remember vividly. When it was, it went from TWA to Eastern Championship Wrestling, and literally the minute Shane Douglas throws the belt down, it becomes extreme. And because you never threw a belt down, especially the NWA world title, like that had so much history to it. And when he threw it down, like that reverberated through I don't care what level of pro wrestler you are, that reverberated and hit everybody to its core, I'm sure.
It was neat, and it was local to us too. I was always from Jersey. I was, half
Yeah,
hour
right.
from the arena, so you always kind of knew what was happening. And after Raw or whatever at night at 11, 12 o'clock at night, you can't sleep, and you got school the next day. Suddenly ECW is coming on the TV. You're staying up for another hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good stuff. I mean, that to me was just, you know, again, part of my, ingrained in my childhood. Um, but I know you talked a little bit about, the pit bulls and them training you, but who did you kind of idolize growing up or try to, you know, I don't want to say mimic like it's a bad thing, like model yourself after, whether it's work ethic, wrestling style. Because did you take a little bit from wrestler A and then wrestler B and kind of mold it in? So who are those wrestlers that you kind of molded yourself after?
First couple indie guys I saw were guys like Steve Corino, Rick Ratchet, J.R. Ryder, the Misfits,
Hmm.
um, Gilberts, Missy Hyatt, Todd Gordon, the Pitbulls,
Yeah.
Donnie B, Simon Diamond, uh,
Yeah.
Don Montoya, Reckless, friggin' youth, my goodness.
I
These
know.
people, yeah,
Tragically underrated is Reckless. One of my favorites ever.
it's not even he's tragically underrated. It's there was no social media back then. That's the only problem.
Ah, it's a
That's
good
it.
point.
That's
Yeah,
the only
that's a
problem.
good point.
If people could have seen what he did, you know. But yeah, so that I'm
Well, they
influenced by
can every week on Monday Night Raw. Reckless was doing that in 1999.
that's right.
Yeah.
You're
Reckless,
not.
the SAT, Amazing Red, they were all doing those things as we were coming up. And now, like, I mean, even for God's sake, they even call the move the Spanish Fly. It's like, well, how do you think it got that name? You
I
know what
know.
I mean?
I know. I know.
In
That's
reference to SAT listeners, not to Reckless Youth, but yeah.
yeah.
But
It's
I'm sorry,
sad. As
Johnny.
far
Go.
as tag teams go, I think, believe it or not, Furnace and LaFon, Crawford and
Yeah.
Furnace in Japan. I think if I had to pick one tag team that
Oh yeah.
most influenced me and that I probably have, I don't think I've ever stolen directly from another pro wrestler. I hope I haven't. If I did, it was subconscious. Um, but the closest thing I've ever done stealing moves wise would be from Furnace and LaFon. They've influenced me so much. I think their moves in a series are just to this day, you just can't find much better than what they did. So yeah, I was a big fan of theirs. But the problem is
Howard, you
they didn't cut promos though. So they were
right.
great in the ring, but you know what I mean? So I looked at it like, look, I'm not their size. I'm not a shooter.
Yeah.
I'm not an Olympic weightlifter like Furness, but
Yeah.
maybe I can go out there and be a coward chicken shit heel. You know what I mean? And that's what I did.
Well,
I
you
know
know
you
what
said
Doug could do
you
really well, right? You know what Doug could do really well, Johnny, was drop kick. So I was not stealing anything from Doug Furnace.
know who taught me how to drop kick? Referee Mike Keener taught me my drop kick.
Oh, Mike's great.
In
Yeah.
America. Yeah, he taught me how to
Hmm.
drop kick. I got to say that. So, and
Yep.
he told me flat out, like, dude, you need to drop kick over people's shoulders. You need to hit them right in the
Yeah.
mouth. If you're not, then do not even bother doing a drop kick or do one off the top rope.
Yeah. I did. I actually have really nice form. It's the funny thing is I can't get the height. And one of my first trainers was Simon Diamond, was Lance, and he said, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that. You're gonna be a heel, right? And I said, well, I am now.
Go figure. Nothing like no choice to make up your mind.
Exactly, yeah. But that's as Howard was saying, the arena and Tri-State Eastern Championship Wrestling was so influential in our area because you as you said, you have close ties. Both my trainers, Glenn came from there. He was Tri-State and Eastern Championship Wrestling. Lance Simon Diamond went there. So Steve Carino, who Steve didn't train me, but Steve worked out a lot at WrestleTech, where you guys would come down and work with us. Um, I believe you were there. I know J.R. Ryder would always be there. Trent was there a few times,
Yeah, I
and
went a few times, yeah.
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because we worked through some stuff down there early on. But this area is just so chock full of influence. from Jim Kettner himself to, Todd Gordon to um, Joel Goodhart. I love that we all have that like family tie here where like we are really influential. Well, I'll say you guys and I watched everybody being really influential to the rest of the United States. What do you
Well,
think?
it just be the
What's our
soil.
legacy?
It
What's
could be
that?
the soil. It could be the area. It could just
It could be.
everything you just said about the wrestlers in this area is kind of also
Hmm.
true about just people in this area in general. Like when you think
Yeah.
about when you go to, I don't know, the South, anywhere in the South, just pick a spot, close your eyes,
Hmm.
throw a dart, okay?
Yeah.
And you go there, you're going to probably get good customer service, which
Yes.
is insane. People are probably going to be kind to you, which is
True.
insane.
Hmm.
Okay. Life moves slower down there. Up here in New Jersey and Philly and New York and this whole
Hmm.
corridor in between, life moves so fast, people barely even look at each other anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on a Instagram page of Jersey Attitude, it's called. You should
Hmm.
see the things these people do on a daily basis. Now,
Oh, wow.
I don't see no Missouri Attitude or Iowa Attitude pages.
Right.
It's Jersey. So
Hmm.
I think the wrestlers around here are just fruit of the poison tree. We're all half crazy. I'm
Yeah.
serious. And
No,
and
I know.
and in order to be successful in this business, you got to be half crazy. I'm dead serious with
I
that.
think you're right. I know.
Yeah.
I always wondered that because I never, well, I should back up. I don't consider myself half crazy, but when I'm talking to people and they find out like what I've done and how long I've done it, they're like, wait a minute, you still do it? Are you crazy? No, man. No, but to your point, going back to how we were trained in longevity and what this sport morphed into is a business, and it always was a business, but even more so now, it's longevity. So what are we doing to be safe in the ring? Um, Telling the story versus, and this is again, this is a famous area for crash and burn and guys, um, careers cut shorter than maybe they should be because of the styles that they wrestled, which on the flip side of that, they also pioneered most of what's popular today across the United States. So th- I don't know, man. Like, I don't look at you and think like you're crazy. I look at you and there's this intelligence and there's this depth. And then a lot of the guys that I get a chance to talk to and get to know, I feel the same way about. So are we crazy or are we just viewed that way from people who look at us from the outside, you know?
Crazy is too blanketed of a term. I should have been more specific.
No,
Let me
no, no.
say,
It's just an interesting talking point. Like I get what you're saying. Hmm.
I mean, I think to answer your question, I think I'm more than half crazy. Half crazy is letting myself off the hook, in my opinion. The things I've done in the ring are stupid, just stupid, markish, if you will. I shouldn't have done them.
Yeah.
I remember doing matches when I was younger and hiding them from Donnie B and Nova and all them because if they
Oh, I
saw it,
bet.
they go,
Yeah.
get the hell out of here. You're right. They get the hell out of here. Right. So I used
Yeah.
to have to hide stuff. The fact that me and Trent smoked marijuana when we were 19 and 20, we used to hide that from Donnie B. Um,
Yeah.
and when he finally found out, we sort of were just like, all right, goodbye. And he was just like, I could care less. And we're like,
Yeah.
why did we hide that from him for so long? And he could care
Right.
less. So like when we came into the business, we were afraid of not fitting in.
Hmm.
You got to come in and sort of be ready to be molded a little bit by the business. You can't just
Yeah.
come in and expect everything's going to move around you. You know what I'm saying? And I
Right.
get the
Hmm.
feeling that happens nowadays. There's a couple guys in wrestling that I can see the way they act. They think the business is going to move around them. And
Hmm.
guys like me just sit back and watch and just wait and you just watch and you're just like,
Exactly.
oh, here it comes.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's what I say. Here's what I tell my students. Everyone runs for the highest position and fights over it.
Yeah.
Okay. I run to the lowest position where no one's at.
Hmm.
I spread out. I form a little community because the rent's cheap. No one wants to be at the lowest position. Okay.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And like you wait a few minutes and guess what happens? All the people that are fighting over the top spot start riding the stream down and they end up in your pool.
Yeah.
And guess
Very
what? They
good
stay
point.
with you until you release them by offending them. As long as you don't offend them, that's the only bar. That's it. Just don't offend people.
Yeah.
You want to be in the wrestling business and be successful, don't offend people.
There you
Who
go.
thought of that? Now, Now,
That's
keep
a
in mind,
great.
I offend people constantly. All right, I'm a hypocrite. I've lost my purity of intention, but I'm just getting back from an actual spiritual retreat. When that happens, I go on
Yeah,
retreat and try to fix myself. I don't just try to be a slob and say, "Well, it's everyone else's problem."
Right.
right. I like that though, that lowest spot because every spot on a card is important, and I think that people lose sight of that. I've even heard things over the past, and I agree with it, and I understand it, but I've heard that adage of, well, if you're not in the main event WrestleMania, why are you in it? Well, I got news. I never wanted to go big time, and I know a lot of the guys that didn't. They just wanted to be a pro wrestler. That was big time to them. So then I would say, and in the early days, I had no clout. I wasn't around long enough to fight that logic. But now I'll look at anybody and say, I can highly contest that. I know a lot of guys, you and me included, and probably 200 to 300 of our friends and peers who've made a really nice run over a period of a couple of decades and never stepped into a WrestleMania ring. Um, I think it's a great goal. I think that people, if you want to get there, I support that. But I also think that every spot on the card is important, and that's what my point is we've lost sight of that. Jim taught me that the opening match is as important as the closer of the first half, as important as the opener of the second half. The matches in between are there for a reason, whether it be to give them a break, to slow it up a little bit for the pace of the show. Everything is important. Just like when we get in the ring, every move is important. Every sequence is important. You can break it down to the most micro level or go up to the highest, macro level. I think you just really hit that real eloquently, that you just floated down. You were I don't want to say utility guy, but you're happy to take your place where nobody wants to fill the spot. And that is
How about
invaluable.
this? I don't mean to cut you off, but you guys are going to agree with me. Have you ever heard the term Genetti used negatively?
No,
Oh, you're the Genetti of your team. Let me tell you
right,
something. Let me tell you
exactly.
something. I will wait in line overnight to
Yep,
be called Marty Jannetty. Okay,
exactly.
the
Yeah.
biggest
And it's
honor
funny you
you can
brought him
have.
up because we just talked about Marty Jannetty last week and how
Was it last week? I
underrated.
can't remember. Yeah.
Last week, yeah, it was within the
Hmm.
last 2 weeks, and we talked
Yeah.
really about how underrated Marty Jannetty really is. Like
Well, it's
nobody,
it's because he was next to Shawn Michaels. It's the moon next to the sun. I mean,
right,
it's
Yeah.
not his fault, but he's still a moon. He's still a celestial body in the
He's
solar system. That's
unbelievable.
freaking
right,
Yeah.
huge.
right.
And there are people that would argue. I never worked with either one of them, to be honest with you. There are people that argue he was just as good, if not better. So it's subjective, you know.
Well, you got to be able to play
Um,
well with others too. It's
yes.
about backstage too. It's not just
Oh
about what
yeah.
you do, and that's what screwed me over is my backstage. I've always had I had an attitude and a half when I was younger. I tried to come in as, like I said, as being humble and stuff, but God, some of the things I got away with saying to people. Let me tell you guys something. I'm lucky I didn't get my ass beat on a semi-regular basis. We used to do hotlines. We used to have hotlines and we used to talk shit on. It was ridiculous. Like.
Oh my God. The
Yeah, I'm
hotlines.
serious. I'm
One
serious.
eight
I'm
hundred.
serious. Like, I think part of the reason I'm back in the wrestling business is just to clean up my mess from the first time around. It's the right thing to do. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
Right.
hear
And,
that.
and, and I think, like, and I may have shared this on the air Mozart before, but I
Hmm.
think we as fans, you know, and myself included at times, look at guys say, oh, yeah, he's a success. You talk about, your Hulk Hogan's, your Rocks, your Stone Colds and all the, yes, they're arguably a success, right? But does that mean, and listen, it took me a long time to come to this realization as I get older, I get a teeny bit smarter. Um, does that mean, Hulk Hogan, he's a success. Does that mean that the Brooklyn Brawler wasn't a success?
Exactly.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Exactly.
not. Guy spent 28 years in the WWF,
Well, there's
and did his
longevity
job
too.
every night.
Yeah, different kinds
Iron
of
Mike Sharp.
success.
Right, Iron
Iron
Mike
Mike.
Shot, right.
Hmm.
You know what? Let me tell you something. Some wrestlers, their job is to shine and to be in the main event of WrestleMania and to bring the business to new audiences, okay?
Hmm.
But some other guys are in the business to give birth to other wrestlers. And that's
Yes.
Yes.
Iron Mike Sharp, okay?
Yep.
That's people like you said, Glenn Osborne,
Hmm.
Crowbar. How, like, all these guys
Oh
from
yeah.
back in the day, how many people have they given birth to and influenced that they don't even like realize at this
Oh
point
man,
how many
they
people?
it's almost like we had Glenn and I are good friends obviously still, and we have him on occasion, and we talked about had I said, Glenn, how many guys that were being groomed for WWE, WWF at the time, did you work through the indies? And he's like, oh man, like I never really thought about it. But when we sat there and we thought about it, to your point, yeah, he was helping a lot of guys get better at their craft to be on TV.
And not only that, how about
Hmm.
bringing people off the street and training them to be wrestlers? That's literally the posterity of the wrestling business. The success of future generations in wrestling
Yeah,
depends on good wrestling trainers pulling the right people off the street and training them the right way to be torchbearers for the rest of us. And guys
perfect.
like Iron Mike Sharp, my God, if you look at how many people he trained, like, and what's he
Yeah,
known for? A leather thing on his arm and being a quote unquote jobber. Pff, dude, holy
yeah.
moly. When he goes to wrestling heaven, St.
Hmm.
Peter's going to say, thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah,
Get up
Yeah.
there on the throne.
right.
Well, look at our I think everybody's one of our local heroes or semi-local is Johnny Rods. How many people did
I was
Johnny
saying, yeah,
Rods
John,
put
yeah.
out into wrestling, and that we would
The guy that
totally
I'm
not.
going to wrestle, I have a death match. God.
Nice.
Guys, I have a death match coming up in Vegas a couple days before WrestleMania. And I'm
No
wrestling
way.
Feral Face. And Feral Face is a Johnny Rod student today.
Yeah. Yep.
Like what?
Wow.
Yeah. The
What?
the the lineage. Johnny, what do you look for though when you're pulling guys in or they come to do you have a school? Like, do you have a physical location where they come to?
I
What?
do. We just opened it in June. I haven't been a much of a
Okay.
hands-on trainer, I'll be honest with you. I live down the
Hmm.
shore, so it's a little bit of a hike for me. I'm still switching some things up. But
Nice.
what I look for is how do I say this? If you're gonna be a sculptor, you want soft clay.
Hmm.
And
I
I look
understand.
for guys that are still soft, as far as still moldable, not too set in their ways where they're not able to be broken down and retaught. Because a big part of being a wrestler is having a good foundation. If
Hmm.
you don't spend the time on your foundation and really fortify it, you anything you build above it, you're now in danger. That's one of the Jesus Christ's parables. Is that
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
if you want to have a house that's going to survive, you need to anchor it into the bedrock, and that takes time and effort, and it sucks to do.
Hmm.
Once it's done, you don't ever have to worry about losing your house. You're
Right.
and that's the kind of wrestling trainer I try to be, and because
Okay.
that's how the peoples were with me. I mean, I did not get in the ring and hit the ropes for months.
Yeah.
It was show up and wrestle on the mats outside as if I was a collegiate wrestler in high school for like
Hmm.
4 months, learning chain wrestling and fireman's carries and proper leverage holds and stuff before
Yeah.
we even got in the wrestling ring. That
Same with me.
you know where that
I we
happens today? Hardly anywhere.
Yeah, we did it in a ring, but that's how Lance Diamond was with us for weeks, maybe months. It was in the ring, it was drills,
So
it was
jealous
really
that you were
like
trained. I'm jealous you were trained by Lance Diamond. I went, yo, let me tell
he's
you something. I
great.
used to watch him in the crowd. I used to sit in the crowd and watch him.
Isn't
And
he great?
him and I looked alike. We looked alike.
Yeah,
So
you did. Hmm.
I went to Donnie B when I was 18, 19 years old before I ever wrestled on a show. Okay. And I sent him a letter, a typed letter of
Wow.
an angle introducing me as Lance Diamond's little brother. Okay.
I love it.
Who this whole thing, and the Pitbulls were going to give me a big super bomb and everything. And I thought for sure, like, it's just a matter of time before my phone rings and Donnie calls
Right.
me and says, "We love it. Get down here." Meanwhile,
Yeah.
it's probably hanging somewhere to laugh at that I would even bother sending such a thing. But I was that big of a fan of Carino and Lance
Yeah.
Diamond, that I was thinking of ways to ride their coattails as a fan.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Wow.
I think I can't remember if he was still working for ECWA with Jim when you guys came, or if he had just left for ECW. I don't know if you crossed paths with him there or not. because he was
I
with
mostly
Dennis
saw
too a lot.
with him. It was NWA. I saw him. But
Yeah, it
I would
was.
be in the crowd. I have pictures of
Yep.
me with him in the crowd. Him, and Julio De Niro took a picture
Oh
together
man,
once with me as a fan. Yeah.
he's taking me back, Howard. These are all guys that I started on shows with. Well, obviously, Lance trained me, but it was originally Lance and Jim, and Jim would come in and just stop action and be like, "Put your foot here, move your foot there, put your arm here." Okay, now Lance, now go. And because as he's doing it, he can't see because he's doing it. So
Right.
he can't see like why, we're taking the fireman's carry wonky or why we're doing, so the education that I got between those two, and I always say, Johnny, like Lance taught me the moves. He taught me how to do the moves, how to be functionally, technically sound. Jim was always in the background teaching that, teaching psychology. But Glenn Osborne came in as the head trainer and taught me how to work. I started learning tradecraft at that point. Now I'm learning how to punch and kick and not slap my thigh, but still get a noise, you know what I mean? The way that we learned, you under the pit bulls, me under those guys, and countless other dudes that we came up with, I tried to replicate that. And I don't know about you when you started to train, but I found that I was a terrible trainer until I had a conversation with Jim because I didn't know how to teach them how to work. I could teach them all the moves, even the moves that I can't physically do. I could teach them the fundamentals of doing a moonsault, although you're not going to see me doing one. Um, that was all fine. It was teaching them how to work. It took me a minute. What are some of the struggles that you found when you became a trainer?
It's funny you say that. I think I've seen other wrestling schools, and I'm not going to name any because I'm not going to be a jerk, but where it's like the Model T Ford going through the Ford assembly line.
Hmm.
Okay, it's this. Every person gets put in one end of the factory. They have some things happen to them inside, and they come out the other end of the factory as a certain mold.
Hmm.
That does not take into account human individuality and uniqueness.
Right.
If it's just an athletic game, then that's fine. But it's not. So that's not fine
Right.
anymore. Do you understand? So
Right.
I
it
do.
has to go, yeah. That's how I feel. It has to go to the point where you as a wrestling trainer have to have
Hmm.
enough confidence in your own ability. Okay. In other words, if you're going to teach people something, you don't just know the lesson that you're teaching them. You need to know 10 times that lesson. And
That's a
then
good
you pick
point.
and choose. A lot of wrestlers just learn the lesson and then they parrot it to someone else and they think, there, I taught them. But they're not able to stop and listen and look at the person in front of them, not the wannabe
Hmm.
wrestler, the human being, and take a minute to say, what's making this human being tick? What's this human being's motivation? What is this human being good at in his real life that I can
Yeah.
extort, that I can expose and shine a light on and say, yo, this is an engine. This is a cylinder in your engine that you're neglecting because you weren't taught to think like this. So
Yeah.
my job is to find those hidden cylinders, okay? Because the Model T, assembly line is only going to find like 2 or 3 cylinders at most out of 8. That's it, okay? And that's
Good
easy.
point.
Anyone can do that. You can watch YouTube videos on how to wrestle and you can figure out a few of your cylinders. Okay, that's easy. A
Hmm.
monkey can do that. All right.
Hmm.
But to have the connection to wrestling through your heart, not your mind, and be able to look at another person and say, your uniqueness needs to be expressed. How can we together collaborate to get you to best express that uniqueness so fans around the world can, drum roll, fall in love with
Love you.
you?
Exactly.
That's it. That's the secret.
Yeah. How far
Yeah,
along do
me.
you
Well,
think you were
just
when
me.
you
The
were
only guy in wrestling that has the secret is me, sitting in Egg Harbor, New Jersey.
Hey, listen, man, like let it out, dude, because the wrestling business needs all the good trainers, all the good advice we can give. I think it's a responsibility to pass it on. But I was going to ask, how long do you think you were in training before that kind of light bulb went off and you realized that's what, you know, uh, Gary and Anthony were doing with you, bringing out something unique? Because I never realized that until probably after I was literally on shows that, wow, that's what that was about, you know?
He called it psychology. I remember Anthony, the pit bull, saying to me, I'd only been training about
Hmm.
6 months, and he said something to me about, you're good enough now already that if you had to wrestle me on an event, this is Anthony talking to me,
Hmm.
I could carry you to a passable match where no one in the crowd would say this kid's untrained. And I was like,
Wow.
wow. Like, I remember thinking, like, holy shit, I made it, you know? And then he goes
Yeah.
on to say, and I could also teach you psychology, but I'm not going to do that because if I do, you're something like it's too soon and no one taught me this early and you won't get it anyway. And I remember going to the
Okay.
other people in my class saying, I'm paying this freaking guy and he's telling me he's not going to teach me something.
He knew you weren't
I'm
ready
like ready
yet.
to ask for my money back. I'm like ready to ask for my money back. But
Yeah.
with Anthony Durante, it's hey Anthony, I got to ask you something. He looks at you and you go, oh, never mind, nothing. I'm good, and you walk away. He's
Yeah,
scary
I
as
changed
shit.
my mind.
So
Exactly.
you're right. So I never actually said anything to him about it. Years later, after all this resentment, like Anthony's a piece of garbage for doing that to me. What a jerk. Years later, you're right. It just boom. And I was like, oh my God, I get it now, Anthony. It's like a seed
Hmm.
that has to germinate and grow, and you can't coax it, you can't force it, and if you
Hmm.
try to, you're like Chris Farley with his little pet, my naughty pet, and he just kills it, right? Psychology is
It
a
sounds like
it's a
when you
seed.
right. It sounds like when he first told you that you had that that Jack Nicholson moment where you can't handle the truth. Like you
Yes.
don't want me to tell you because you can't handle what I'm about to tell you.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm $2,500 in, Anthony. When are you gonna friggin' teach me? You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And now I realize, like, no, that he, like, thank God for Anthony. you
Uh-huh.
know because some lessons need to be taught organically, and it
Yeah.
has to happen slowly. And what I've noticed is the slower the lesson, the longer you grasp it. It never gets taken away from you. If you work hard and it takes you forever to get something, you never lose
Yeah.
it. But when it's given to you quick, you might as well just throw it the hell away because it's going.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny for me because when I would watch my students work matches, I would want to get in and I would want to be like, okay, stop, dude. And sometimes depending on, how we were drilling, what the lesson was, there were stop action moments. Like I think everybody had those, but I would just let them go and then we would talk about it. I'd be like, what were you trying to convey to the crowd? I didn't say what I stopped using what story are you trying to tell? Because then everybody's like, well, I was working the leg. And that's not what I'm talking about. Well, I was working his neck. You couldn't tell the whole that don't care. What story were you trying to tell the crowd? What emotion did you want the crowd to feel? Because then we can peel that onion back. And that's how Jim had taught me and all the guys that we came up with when you were coming down to the school. Was it much like Anthony? It wasn't that one moment where it was like, okay, let's sit down and I'm going to teach you psychology. No, it was being done real gradually. And we wouldn't have got it at the time if he did sit down and say, okay, come on in, get a notebook, let's talk. That was for
You
years
know what's funny
later.
though? You can learn psychology in life, in nature, if you just pay attention.
Exactly.
Seinfeld. Have you ever watched an episode of Seinfeld?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You're right
Yeah.
on.
There's psychology in
Yes.
Seinfeld. I mean, it's
Yep.
perfect psychology. The South Park movie has an amazing amount of psychology
Uh,
in it. I'm like watching this, like,
absolutely.
these guys have to be wrestlers?
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
it's where
there.
I
If
would
you're
take a
willing. Go ahead.
yeah, I would take a lot of inspiration from that. I still do. Like I love watching The Office, and I'm like, oh, I get that. That's cool. Oh, that was a
Right.
nice twist. Oh, I see how they build up to that. And then I'll take that to the ring. Literally still.
There's only one human nature, and
Hmm.
any business or art or sport that involves humans is the same
Hmm.
at some level. It really is. It's like a
Yeah.
Venn diagram. There's an overlap of everything because humans are involved. So I've found if you can try to understand human nature, it makes up for any
Hmm.
gaps you might have in anything else, like with wrestling or with training people. If you're just
Ex
interested in human beings, there's a crazy
yeah.
idea today. It actually makes a difference.
Wow.
Right. Well,
Dude,
one of
this
my
is
favorite
awesome.
activities, usually when, like if I go out to dinner or whatever, one of my favorite things
Which is
other than
every
eating,
night, Howard.
right, is just watch people when you're at the diner. Just watch them. Watch how they eat. Watch, how they talk to each other, and you can learn a lot. Like you say, oh,
Hmm.
that couple's been married for years. That couple's over there is
Yeah.
dating. That's a brother and sister over there, or and just by watching how they act and how they move, and they don't have to say anything to me. I can just watch their
Hmm.
movements, and I think that translates into pro wrestling. I should, as a fan, should be able to tell by how a guy walks, how he holds himself. I
Yeah.
I don't like him. There's something about it. I don't know why yet. There's just something about him that I don't like. Or, oh man, I like that guy. Like there's something that I can get behind on that
You're
guy.
getting into metaphysics. You're getting dangerously close to metaphysics right now.
You know what, Johnny?
You
Let's
are, because we
let's
don't know
talk a
why.
little
We
bit
don't know
about
why
that.
that happened. Yeah, well, we don't
Yeah.
know why. We don't know why. And if we say we do, we're lying. Certainty's bullshit.
Right.
We're all just hoping and guessing. Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't know why that happens. We really don't. What did you ever hear people say he has the quote unquote it factor?
Yeah.
Yes.
The
Hmm.
the it factor by definition is a metaphysical term because it's intangible. It
Yeah.
cannot be defined.
Right.
Exactly.
But it exists. It exists
Yeah.
just like love. Prove to me love exists.
Right.
You can't.
It's
Right.
yeah, you can't wrap your mind around it. So we were talking a little
No.
bit, you and I always get into these things, especially in later years as we've gotten older and run into each other. Our our shared love of the metaphysical word, the esoteric world, the ancient alien theory. I did not know this until just we were chatting a little bit earlier. You did seminary, correct?
It's called formation. I was in the
It's formation. Okay.
Franciscan seminar. I was going to be a priest. Yes. So I did
Wow.
about
Under what
2 years of
denomination?
prep.
Because
Catholic.
I
I
don't
would have
know
been
anything
Franciscan
about Catholics. So you were actually doing, okay. Can you,
after
do you
St.
mind getting
Francis,
into
which is
that?
brown robe and vow of poverty. Money is just
Wow. It was, so
listen,
this
listen.
was like hardcore, like
It is.
Catholicism, like you were getting ready to, man, can you get into that a little bit? Talk a little bit about that, because that's an aspect of your personality that I think people would be very interested in. I
Yeah,
am.
I was actually going to be a friar. I was trying to be a friar, brown robe
Nice.
friar.
Cool.
I've always had issues with money. I always have. I've never been good at money. I think that's why I was attracted to independent pro wrestling. Um, you know,
Because you were going to get
if,
rich.
if you're
Right.
not trying to make money, come into the wrestling business. You'll do wonderfully.
Well, not to cut you off before you start. Um, Bill Watts had a famous saying. You know how you make $1 million in pro wrestling? You
You
start with
quit.
Get
two.
out.
There you
You
go.
start with two, and you wind up with a million.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
That's brilliant.
exactly.
That's brilliant. But
Mm,
yeah, I did it because, you know, I have not been in a lot of relationships in my life. I've been a pretty single guy most of my life.
hmm
And, I'm homosexual. A lot of people don't know that about me.
mm,
And back in the day, that was not okay at all.
right.
I mean, AIDS were a big
Exactly.
deal. You watch these TV shows now where people in the 80s are coming out and their families are all like, oh, it's okay. And all our friends are
Right.
like, well, you're our friend anyway. It's like, no, dude, there
Yeah.
was AIDS. And as soon as someone said the word gay, they now had
Oh yeah.
AIDS and you walked the
Yep.
hell away from them. That's the reality. Okay. But I
Right.
was like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old dealing with this stuff back then. So I was
Hmm.
all screwed up. Okay. So when I came into the wrestling business, I had to hide who I was. I
Yep.
had a persona, not a personality,
Hmm.
you see? And people like Jim picked up on that, Jim Kettner. I remember him telling people,
Hmm.
Johnny's a psychology major. We got to watch him, he used to say.
Yeah.
Because he
Well,
knew I wasn't
Jim, as
thinking
you
like
know,
everyone else.
Jim's on a different level with that too. He's kind of a
You
metaphysical
know,
genius, and I have no idea, but you know that.
it's from isolation. Isolation. That's why.
Hmm.
I got a funny Jim Kettner story. I was going to a couple ECWA shows, and I seen him. Him and Mozart usually travel together because they live near each other, and he introduced me
Jim hates
to
that. No, I'm
Jim,
just kidding.
personally. So and I'm like, man, I got to meet Jim Kettner, like the famous Jim Kettner, right? ECWA founder, to me, like a wrestling genius. And, we talked a little bit, and then, we left for the night. We came back to the next show, and like he sought me out and came over and says, "Hey, Howard," and I'm like, "Oh my God, he remembered my name!" Like, oh my gosh, like Jim remembered who I was. Like, to me, that was such a thrill that some of the, I mean, listen, I mean, to me, he'll always be somebody that I
Look how low that bar is. Oh, what
like.
a great guy. He said hi to me. Well, you're a friggin' human being. Why shouldn't he say hi and know your name? Let's not give people extra credit for doing the bare minimum here. My God.
But I was like, of all the people that he's met and interacted with, it was me. Like, I'm just a guy buying a ticket, man. That's all I am.
Man.
And
You know what,
like,
though, I've noticed, and I tell my students this, the one thing I will say about the wrestling business, there's an invisible bank account in the sky that you pay your dues to, and they don't go away.
Yes.
Thank God they don't go away. Because I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I've been down on my luck thinking, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of the wrestling business, I'm going to get shaken like a flea off a dog. And suddenly I find, oh, I forgot I had paid these dues and now it's coming due, and it gives you just what you need to keep going and get over the hump. When that happens
Yeah.
enough times, you start realizing the universe wants you to do this. And once you realize
Yeah.
that, it doesn't matter what any other human being thinks.
Yeah.
right.
Johnny, how did you, so you were going, so you were talking about getting into formation. Is that the terminology? I can't remember. How
Yes.
did you how did you reconcile, because you use the term universe, and I do too, and I'm very spiritual. I believe in something higher. As we talked about earlier, I just never, like, the organized religion was never for me. So how did you reconcile going from thinking very esoterically, metaphysically, conscious minded to centering just on God and Jesus? That's a really fascinating thing for me. Do was there
It
was
was
it
the
all one and the same for you?
No, it was the opposite. I was
Okay.
raised Catholic, learning about Jesus all through grade school, all through high school. And then when I
Okay.
left high school, and I was out of college even, I think. I want to say I was probably already done college, already back from Japan. And yeah, I think I got to the point where I knew I needed more. So I started studying Vedic wisdom, ancient philosophies. I started studying Tibetan Buddhism. I started studying Wayne Dyer, Eckhart
Wow.
Tolle, um, James Redfield. I just started reading as many metaphysical books that I could get my hands on, about life and about the deeper meanings of life and the subtle realities around us that we don't see all the time and things like that.
Hmm.
So I did a lot of self exploration, a lot of self study, and looking back on it, it was me trying to figure out my own sexuality the whole time. I didn't want to be gay, because it sucked. I didn't
Okay.
want to be that. I used to pray every day to God. God, I'll dedicate my life to you, but can you let me be straight so I don't have to have a horrible life? Like, that's what it was like back then, especially being Italian,
Wow.
man. I love Italian people, but Italian people, especially in the 80s, they did not want to hear anything about the word gay. It just wasn't
Right.
part of our culture, you know?
Right.
Hmm.
So I guess to answer your question about formation and all that,
Yeah.
I started to realize that I'm pretty unique in my thought process. And there's nowhere I
Hmm.
could go to a Shaolin Buddhist temple and it's not going to fit perfectly. I can go to a Catholic temple. It's not going to fit Nothing's going to fit perfectly. I realize that I'm too unique,
Hmm.
and I've gone down too many weird side roads, that now
Gotcha.
I'm an oddly shaped thing. So I just said, what would fit the most? What covers the most bases? What feels the best to me? And I
Hmm.
tried to go into the Catholic Church, and every diocese said, nope, you're gay. Sorry, just like that. The
Wow.
only ones that said, we don't care that you're gay, were the Franciscans. God bless the Franciscans. Thank
Hmm.
the gods for the Franciscans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I went there and they accepted me, and it was all good. And I have a lot to offer, people, but
Absolutely.
the way they say it, the way the Catholic Church told me was, if you want to be a priest, you need to first
Hmm.
be a straight man who has a natural instinct to be a father and to be fatherly. And you need to forego
Okay.
that as a sacrifice to lead your sheep and your flock. And since I'm a gay man, unfortunately, I wasn't born with that inkling to have any kind of fatherly anything. And I had to sit there with a straight face and listen to this being told to me. and say,
Yeah.
"Oh, sure, Father, whatever you say, sir. That makes perfect sense." And inside, I'm thinking, "You're full of shit, dude. Like what?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
want you to understand. I had to knock on about 8 doors before I was allowed in, and even then, I had to go to the back door of the garage, which is where the Franciscans are. They're like the lowest of the low in the Catholic pecking order because they
Okay.
accept everybody. That's not acceptable.
Yeah. What makes
So
them
there,
different?
that's
I
my
don't know anything about that. Like what made
it,
what
they
is
take
if it's the same
they take
religion, why were they so open? Sorry, go ahead.
because they follow um, a certain saint, Saint Francis of Assisi,
Okay.
and Saint Francis was built around his entire life, his entire ministry was built around humility. It was built about a life of service.
Hmm.
There's this story of Ivan Illich, which is a Russian novel, where this
Yeah.
bastard of a man is on his deathbed and he looks at his wife and he says, "What if my whole life was wrong?" And then he dies. And that, when I
Okay.
read that at like age 20, I even start getting emotional just thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever be on my deathbed and think, what if my whole life was wrong? I want to be on my deathbed and say, I loved people. Not I made money. I don't care about that. If I had a family and
Right.
kids, yeah, that would matter to me, but I don't. So my life, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be able to say, I helped people. That's all. Like, what else is there in this life? What else?
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach in my pocket and pull out my change and show St. Peter and say, see, I made this much money in my life. Let me in. He's going to go, what? And that's listen. I say St. Peter because that's how I was raised. Who knows if
Yeah.
St. Peter's going to be in? I don't know. I don't know what happens after I die. But all I know is I'm hedging my bets that if you live a good life, you have the best chance of a better afterlife. So I'm taking that. So that's all I care about anymore. And if I can
Yeah.
pass on this kind of knowledge to wrestling students, I feel like it makes them better individuals. And then they're going to go
Hmm.
farther in wrestling because they're more stable human beings.
Yes. That's a great lesson to learn is to get kids off the street, give them something to do, and if they love wrestling, that's awesome. If it's basketball, if it's whatever sport they want to play. But when they come to us, I think there's a responsibility to try to find a spot for them. If they're not athletically inclined enough to be a wrestler, well, there's other things that you can do. But I think that's what's great about this business is that you can bring people in and create a community of, I mean, we've had a over 20-year friendship. I mean, no, we don't talk on the phone every day, which by the way, you're welcome to touch base whenever you want. I always love hearing from you, but we've always been friends, and that's how many of us are, is that we crossed paths, we did something really special um, in our own lives, and it's not lost on me. And I want to tell you in all honesty, and Howard knows when I say these things, I'm very, very uh, with a lot of humility and a lot of sincerity. I'm very inspired by you and your story because some of it I knew, some of it I didn't. But the thinker that you are is more important to me than anything else. Like you're a thinker, you're humanitarian, and you had mentioned earlier too, and I'm curious. It's a little bit off the beaten path. This is why we call it the rabbit hole. We're all over the place, right? We're digging. We should call it the mole colony. Um, you had
Right.
mentioned earlier is we both have a love for Ancient Aliens, the TV show, and the concept. Did you have to reconcile that when you grew up religious? So was there a battle there, like, oh my God, there can't be aliens, or because my belief is, and I've always argued this. I just tell you my it, God created everybody, not just, people. I mean, he created animals and they don't look just like him. I mean, because they always fall back to, well, but we were created in his image. Yeah, I fucking get that. But you can't tell me he didn't create other, things too. How did you feel about that? Because that's always my argument.
Let me ask you a more fundamental question than that.
Yeah.
If we believe God created the world, let's say we believe in the Bible, we believe God created everything. Okay, let's just say.
Yeah.
Do
Hmm.
we also believe that after that moment he stopped creating and hasn't created since?
I don't buy that at all. So
Right.
that was part of my
Right.
my argument. Yeah.
Right. You have
Hmm.
to assume literally everything God does is creating. Like it's
Yeah.
almost like God can't not create. I feel like if God sneezes, there's an earth.
Yeah.
You see
100%.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
Right.
do see it,
So,
man.
so for
Uh-huh.
us to know physics the way we know physics
Mm-hmm.
and learn the things we're learning about double slit experiments and about coupled coupled
Quantum entanglement,
atoms
right?
across galaxies, you,
Yeah.
you can't have all that and then say, oh, and by the way, we're the only thing in the whole universe. Just us. That's it. Just us.
Yeah.
If that's the case, we might as well just check out right now. And now, what I
I
think is, I think God's the head
agree.
creator, but I think there's what I call under creators. Okay.
Okay.
Like,
I like that.
in other words, maybe there is a species of alien or angel or something out
Mm-hmm.
there that has a direct hand in helping us that
Yeah.
reports to God, maybe, or maybe they report to someone
I
that reports to God, or maybe who
I
the
love it.
hell knows? But the
Yeah.
point is, there's an underlying mechanism in this universe. This universe is not chaotic. Okay, the finely tuned universe
No.
has about eight or nine things where if the knobs were not exactly where they are, there would be no life. That is too big of uh, a possibility of being a coincidence. It's just not. It's just not.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a
I think
highly ordered universe.
absolutely. And the latest science says, from James Webb that the universe is alive, that it has a consciousness, So that to
Agreed.
me is that's God in action to me. That's divinity to me. That's
So
and when
let's
we
talk
when
the
we bring
100
that
monkey. You guys know the 100 monkey theory? You ever hear of the 100 monkey theory?
I don't know if I'm familiar. I might be, but tell me because
We're going to
I'm
talk about
intrigued.
isolated islands again. This island of Sumatra had a population of monkeys, and they were dying because there was nothing to eat. Well, there was plenty of
Hmm.
yams, sweet potatoes, but they were dirty. They were like buried. You couldn't see them, so they didn't realize they were food.
Right.
So they were dying. So scientists went on the island and taught them how to wash the yams and eat them. And as soon as the whole island was eating yams, suddenly monkeys around the whole earth at the same time were cleaning their yams
And
and
how would
cleaning
they
their
know
food.
that?
Suddenly, it's like
Right.
it went into the collective consciousness.
Hmm. That is
That's the
What?
future
fascinating.
of that's that's the future of metaphysics right there. And
I
we have no
I never
idea
heard
yet.
that. No, man, I never heard that, but that's like
Wow.
it's kind of like how you can explain like Howard's like, "Oh my God, where are we going with this?" But it's kind of like how we can explain
I don't
remote
care.
viewing,
Like I'm
how we
just
can explain like
mesmerized.
consciousness being moved from like one, people, I've read some really interesting stuff recently where people would meditate and someone thousands of miles away would see them because they were putting their consciousness there. Like that to me is the science and the religion to me is one and the same. Like like you said, we're just starting to understand things as a species that maybe the ancients knew. Maybe that's how the pyramids got there. Because I don't know if you knew this, but I was an engineering major in college, and there is no way, shape, or form, and it's never been presented to me how the pyramids were built. I don't give a shit about rolling them on sand, putting them on a river. I tell you a funny story. My fiance at the time, wonderful human being, we're still very close. She wanted me to move a rock from one side of the house to the other. Now the rock, Johnny, was about like this big around, if you can see my hands, but it probably weighed in excess of 100 pounds. It was just the density of it. So she goes, "Oh, can you move that?" "Oh yeah, I can move that because I'm a wrestler. I'm a bad man." Well, about halfway around the house, I'm huffing and puffing, and yeah, Howard's laughing. I had to put the rock down, and I'm like, son of a bitch, there is no fucking way that even 100,000 men, slaves, whatever it was supposed to be in Egypt, moved those fucking 200,000 ton stones. It's not possible. And she's laughing, and she goes, "You know what? It's not. I agree with you." That's what I'm saying. We're starting to come to a consciousness now that something back in those days had, which is why I started to get into Ancient Aliens, because they were trying to explain what this lost technology. Which, by
All
the
right,
way, if you want me
I'm
to
going to
bring
tell
it
you
back
my
around to wrestling, Howard, wrestling is the oldest sport in the world, going all the way back to I want to say Iran, in I mean long before humans were
yep.
supposedly a
And
civilization. But anyway, take it, Johnny.
prostitution's the oldest prostitution's the
Prostit
oldest
the
so it
oldest.
makes sense.
Yep, and wrestling's the oldest sport, and prostitution's the oldest business.
Yeah, no coincidence there.
Yeah. Doesn't make it okay, Howard. So wherever your wife is, you stay right where you are. You can't run out on the streets
But
and participate.
let me Mozart, let me just real quick before we get off aliens, let me tell you
Yeah,
what I've
man.
put together.
Please.
I think it all has to do with mass, MASS. In other words,
Okay.
you're going to see more UFOs around a mountain
Mm-hmm.
because the mountain is somehow like, do you know what the piezo electric effect is?
I'm
Where if you have
familiar.
quartz
Yeah.
crystal
Mm-hmm.
and you put it in
Yep.
if you squeeze quartz crystal, it releases electricity.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Uh-huh.
quartz in the mountains. And when the plates shift, it stresses the quartz and releases electricity. So I think these
Yes.
UFOs know how to pick that electricity and use it to, that's all it is. It's just about mass. It's about heavy things pushing
Yes.
down and
Well, is
they can
that the
take
theory
that
where?
energy and use it.
Yeah, is that the theory where where the proponents of UFOs being non-earthly um, are got they not instinctively, but through their technology, they know where to come and like refuel the ships? Because I've heard that theory. Is that related to what you're saying, or
It could
where
be
they can take
magnetic
the
lines.
electricity? Mm-hmm.
Well, think of it like if you see a flock of birds and they all turn on a dime, right?
Yes.
Is that
Mm-hmm.
is that 3 dozen quote unquote souls, one in each bird, and they all turn at the same time? Or is it one soul spread out amongst 5 dozen birds, and that's why they can turn at the same time? We don't know if
Which
UFOs are alive or not. I think half of the
that good
UFOs are
point.
actually alive, the actual ship.
That I've heard that theory too, yeah. And we were, obviously I'm going to go with the theory that they exist and we've reverse engineered some too, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that there are life forms that we aren't really familiar with. That I'm loving this conversation,
They're
by the way.
all
We got it. Dude, this is
Well,
Howard's
look,
like, what did I get myself into? I thought
we
we were
are
going
gonna
to
have to
talk
have them on
wrestling.
again
how,
because
how can you be a human and isolate all these different things? It's all one thing. Everything's
I
just
can't
the
either,
human
man.
experience. That's it. It's not like, well, there's wrestling here and
Yes.
then there's humanity over here. If the two don't
Yeah.
collide, then you're not doing it
No.
right.
right,
Yeah.
right,
If there are alien
right.
species, and I'm leaning toward yes, I'm pretty sure they know how to wrestle because again, those are principles of that's mathematics too. Wrestling boils down to leverage, body mass, weight, and distribution. It's all math, man. I
Quote the
love it.
comedian that said, if you're an alien and you find Earth and you watch for the first time and you zoom in on New York City and you see one of us following a dog with a leash and the dog takes a shit and we pick it up and put it in a bag and keep walking, who's the dominant species on this planet?
The
Right.
dog,
Right.
pretty good.
You know, so
Yeah,
we got to hope aliens are smart. Otherwise, they're going to talk to dogs and ignore us.
So I did make the promise to our producer Mozart that we would try to keep it to an hour and a half, and we're approaching
well,
that, but we still got a little bit of time. Not much, but
Johnny,
a
I
little
got
bit.
I got
But I
clout
do
with
want to say
Steve.
that I did promise Steve that I would mention that he mentioned that he
What'd
was
you mention?
a working a ring crew and he thought it might have been in Staten Island, New York,
Hmm.
and um, your good buddy Trent Acid taught him how to run the ring ropes, run up the ring ropes. Why when he was done
Oh,
setting up the ring, he taught him that on a show that he was a ring crew, and he's like, and he never forgot that. So that is his biggest memory of Trent and what he has taught him. Um, but I want to get where are you headed, Johnny? Like where are you going to be next? Where can people check you out?
Sure.
Um, and if there's an aspiring young kid that's 18, 19 years old, instead of writing a letter about an angle that he may want to run by you, how can he reach out to your wrestling
you can
school
do
and
that too.
maybe
Johnny
get a tryout?
Johnny loves letters.
Oh
Right?
yeah. Hand typed. Yeah, no, it's called the Pro Wrestling Star Academy, prowrestlingstaracademy.com. I'm pretty sure that's it. But the company is Pro Wrestling Unplugged. So it's
Hmm.
pwunplugged.com. You can get tickets. We have events coming up. Pro Wrestling Unplugged's a company that I started back in like '03 in
Yeah, you've been
Philly. And
around.
then we ran until, I guess, I want to say we ran until probably 2010. And then now we're back after all these years. Um, and we have an event coming up in Las Vegas as part of the collective GCW's big collective. It'll be on Triller TV. It'll be Wednesday the 15th
Ooh.
at 11:59 p.m. So It's a weird bell time. I don't know how to. It's hard to advertise an 11:59 bell time because the date changes after 1 minute. So technically, I would have ran a
Yeah.
show that spanned 2 days. You know that
Wow.
it's like
Is that April
yeah,
too,
right.
Johnny? Is that April 15th, or
April,
is that where you're? Okay,
April
April. Yeah.
15th. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
called Midnight Express. So far we have Gangrel
Oh,
versus
cool.
Matt Tremont.
Oh,
We have a whole lot. We've added a lot of other stuff. Blackout. I'm going to be there wrestling Feral Face in a rematch from our death match last year. Um,
Nice.
Mozart, don't watch it ever.
Will it upset
You'll
me?
lose respect for me.
No,
Yep,
I wouldn't. I can't
yep.
get lose
You're going to lose
respect for
respect
you.
for me because I listen. I don't know what it is, but when it comes to death matches, I lose my mind.
Oh yeah.
It's like an addiction. You can't
I
even help
didn't
it. I just
realize
lose my mind.
that you did death matches. Like, can I
Go
ask you something? I
watch.
don't want you to
Go
pull
on my
back a
Instagram.
certain. What's that?
Go ahead. I was gonna say, go on
I
my
don't.
Instagram. You'll see clips of me getting killed.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I am now. When you, I don't want to pull back the curtain too far because we have a lot of fans checking out this that'll check out this episode once we drop, I'm sure. Um, do you have a safety protocol when you go into a death match? Like, this is how we're going to handle it. This is what we're going to do. Because I've never done one. That's not my style. I don't have any interest in it. I've seen some that are pretty good, but for the most part, it's a lot of crash and burn and like really gory violence. Like, what's your protocol when you step into the ring for a death match?
I really believe that our job on Earth is to take our instinct, which is a very base emotion, and turn it into actual intuition. And that's what
Hmm.
I try to do. I try to follow my intuition. Before I go into a match, I don't a death match. I sort of
Yeah.
close my eyes, and contemplate
Hmm.
and think what's going to happen. Like, what is the universe trying to make happen in this match? What is it
Okay.
telling me to do? And then I try to do that. There was a time me and Trent were going to do these dives off of the entranceway at the ECW Arena, which was, I don't know,
Oh
20
wow.
feet in the air. It was it
yeah.
was it was high enough that we shouldn't have been diving off of it.
Yeah.
And there's no mats, it's just cement. But we had four guys down there catching us, or six guys. I think it was an 8-man tag, and him and I both jumped. So we each had three
Hmm.
guys to catch us. Okay, so we figured
Yeah.
no big deal. No one caught me. No one
Oh
caught me.
wow.
But the night, but I knew I was going to do that. Like, we had called the spot a few days before. Like, yo, we're jumping off that thing. We had already climbed up. We already knew. Blah blah
Hmm.
blah. The night before we were going to do it, I had a dream that they didn't catch me, and that I
Oh
landed on
no.
my right hip, on the ball socket of my right hip, and shattered it in the dream and couldn't wrestle anymore. So I woke up
Wow.
that next day and was like, yo, man, something's trying to tell me. So I went right to this sporting goods store and I bought a hockey girdle
Hmm.
and wore it underneath my pants, which
Okay.
protected my hip. And I did my dive, and they did not catch me. And I landed
Oh
right on my
wow.
right ball socket hip, right where I thought I was. And if I did not have that girdle on, it would have absolutely shattered my hip because I just hit the concrete.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
how do you, like, where do you compartmentalize that in the grand scheme of life? Where does that fit nicely?
Consciousness. You were seeing. Well, there's a theory too that everything's created. There's only this exact moment is the only thing that exists in it.
Right.
So that's a perfect example of, did you know that was going to happen? So you were able to intervene, and you know what I mean?
I
Like,
don't think I
it's.
knew, but I think my brain was like an antenna, and there was
Hmm.
some wave in the air that I luckily picked up on. That's what I
Yes.
think.
That's what I was, yeah, that's where I was going with it. Not necessarily did you know, because if you knew for sure, you would have been like, God, no, I'm not doing this. But yeah, something
Yeah, right.
something told you that I better, yeah. You can't explain stuff like that. I know as the older I get, I kind of have I actually have this saying, I do not believe in coincidence. Um,
No.
Everything is happening for an exact reason at that exact time.
Well, how easy would it be for me to take that and say, well, that's manifest destiny. God wants me to be a wrestler. So F all the
Hmm.
other wrestlers out there who God's not behind them. I could have easily taken that approach, and I know a lot of
Hmm.
people that would have. But you want to know the approach
Yeah.
I took? The approach I
What's
took
that?
was, damn, I don't know shit.
That's
Like,
me every
what?
day. I'm like, Howard's
Like,
texting me this
something
morning, are you
literally, some
busy? I'm like,
outside force literally, dude, when an outside force other than you saves your
uh-huh.
life, you have no choice but to wake up and be like, something's going on. I at least want to start watching to see what the frig it
Yes.
is. Even if I can't figure it out, at least observe and take in some
Yeah.
information.
It's funny because I always
Wow.
think to myself, like, I think Howard, me and you were talking about this too. I never had what I would consider a mystical experience. I want to, but then I'm like, well, maybe I have because I've had things like that happen before. I've had deja vu. I've thought certain things were going to happen, and lo and behold, they did. Um, I'm like, well, what if I had thought a different way? Like I'll give you an example. Like I should have never made it into pro wrestling. I mean, you knew me back then. I was a probably 175, 180 pounds myself, and kind of skinny, and I just knew I always wanted to be a wrestler, and there was none of my friends wanted to do it. None of the guys that I grew up with wanted to get into it with me, and we all used to watch it together, wrestled around the backyard, had our little leagues as kids, but I was like, no, I really want to do this. And I knew exactly. I also knew, like I told you earlier, that I didn't necessarily want to be on the road 300 and some days a year working for a big company. I wanted to do a TV shot, and I did. But I didn't want to do that. I just kind of knew, and I never. It's only until now. I'm 53. I got into wrestling late. I got in at 26. Didn't debut until I was like 27. So I got in kind of late, right? Because most of the kids that come to you are probably 10 years younger than that. Um, and I just knew, but I never thought about it until recently. I'm like, yeah, dude, like, how am I still doing this? But no, Sosha and Tobin, my tag partners in the Chick Magnets, they're both long retired, still great friends with them. They have no desire. And I'm like, but I'm still doing this. I don't know, man. I just always knew. And likewise, there's some negative stuff that unfolded in my life that I didn't want it to, but because you talked about manifest destiny, I feel like I manifested that, like because that's what I kept focusing on instead of the positive. So we have lots to talk about because I feel like there's so many books and so much that you could turn me on to that like would just open my mind because I didn't expect this conversation to go in this direction, but your mind is amazingly like open to what's out there besides like what we think is out there.
Thank you. One thing I do want to say real quick about what you said about mystical experiences. You're
Hmm.
coming from the interpretation of a mystical experience is a good thing. What about what Christ said, where people that have not seen yet believe, right? So what I'm
That's a
getting at is
recent thing.
if you need a mystical experience to live your life right, then maybe there was something wrong in the beginning. If you're a mystical
Yep.
person without a mystical experience, like you seem to be, in my opinion, that's a greater victory than being
Is it?
handed a
That's
mystical experience.
Dude, I take that as a compliment then because I always wondered like, well, that would be cool to have. But to your point, you're right. I never needed it. I just always was like, yeah,
Well,
I'd like to have that.
once you have a mystical experience, it's not faith anymore.
Good
Now
point.
it's real. You know, there's no leap of faith anymore.
Dude,
Right.
he's like he's blowing my mind, Howard. This has been one of my favorite chats, man. This is fucking awesome.
You, you,
So
I'm
you,
we,
doing.
you you know what I've realized about you, and listen, I've only really talked to him for an hour and 28 minutes. Other than texting him on the phone.
mhm,
I feel like he has a faith that is greater than most
yeah,
because most people have faith right to the point to where it starts to cause
yeah.
an inconvenience
Or they
and
need to
then it
see
stops.
something,
It just
or you
goes
know what?
beyond that.
Yeah. Or Howard too. It's like, but I think Johnny, what you're saying, if I'm understanding correctly, is you have that faith without seeing, because that's the word of the Christ, right? Like that is
Right.
what faith is not seeing, but still having the faith. And I never, if let's take wrestling for example, I just always had the faith that like I was going to do it. It didn't matter that I wasn't the biggest dude. It didn't matter that I wasn't the strongest dude. It didn't matter I wasn't the toughest dude. I was going to do it. And I always had that faith that I
All you need to
was.
do, you just need to find an opening to the end zone, and anyone can do it. You just
Hmm.
gotta be vigilant and be ready to run to that end zone as soon as you see the path. That's it.
Yeah.
Just be patient. You'll eventually. And let me tell you something. You forgot one thing when you were talking
What's
about
that?
yourself back then. You forgot about your hair.
Oh
Your
man,
hair
I
was a
had the
heat
cool
machine.
hair.
It was a heat
Yeah,
machine. Dude, I
yeah.
hated it. I was like, dude, this dude's hateable. Like
You did, I know.
it was like a weapon.
It was like you put like me in a headlock and like all you're doing is eating a bunch of hair. It's like, oh, sorry, man.
Dude, seriously, like it was that was you
It was.
that was a big tool in your bat belt was your hair, and that was a
Oh
very big
man,
deal for you.
it certainly was. Yeah.
And,
Do you
and,
know
and
I
honestly, I mean,
almost
what you know, what better tool to have because it looks. I mean, the hair looks great when when you're being tossed. When it just
yeah,
it's
It does.
flowing when he's getting tossed all around the ring.
looked
It's
great before
following him like it's got no
before it
choice but
started
to
getting
follow him.
gray.
It's a great effect. It really is.
And you can
That's how
use
I
it to
got my
hide your
name.
mouth too, so you don't need to be a ventriloquist.
Right?
Exactly. That's how I got my name was because when Glenn would toss me around, he because Jim had already dubbed me Mozart, and Glenn would call me the Fabulous Fontaine because my hair would fly everywhere, and he just thought it fit. So I'd ask Jim, can we use both of them? He goes, yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, it was the hair was certainly
This is
it
pro wrestling. We can do whatever we want.
didn't hurt, man. That's for sure. You know. Now I look at my latest promo online and I'm like, damn, I look like a distinguished GQ gentleman. What happened to me?
You did look pretty dapper in the promos you cut. I got to admit that you
I
look pretty
mean, listen,
dapper.
dude, you know, you grow up and the women start telling you you have beautiful hair, but I don't want to date a guy with long hair, and all of a sudden you're like, well, fuck, my hair's not so cool anymore, you know?
Yeah,
Realized
I
that
get
in my
it.
30s, Johnny. I
I
was like,
get it.
I wanted the ladies, man, but the ladies only wanted my hair.
Yeah, it happens. There's worse things they
Nah.
could want. You're good.
Yeah, that's a
But
good
man,
point.
this
Yeah.
has been great, Johnny. I appreciate it, man. We got to have you back because I mean we have so much more to talk about.
Anytime.
Um, but I do appreciate as we end. Don't go anywhere. I just got to make sure on the back end everything is good. So, um, but again, thank you, and again, remind people where you're going to be in March or April. Sorry.
Yep, you check us out. We're going to be at the Horseshoe on the 15th of April. It'll be an 11:59 bell. That's right in Las Vegas at the downtown strip. We're going to have it's Gangrel versus Matt Tremont. We have a women's four-way match with some of the best women, Mercedes Martinez,
Mhm.
some of the best women athletes you're going to find anywhere. Jack Evans versus Pat Dynamite. We have a
Oh
lucky
wow.
invitational scramble. We have there just all kinds of stuff. And I'm doing a death match against Feral Face. It's called Uneffin' Necessary 2. We did a death match about a year and a half ago. I think just yesterday I feel better from it. And now we're going to go ahead and do it again. So, I'm just going to have to, I'm just, dude, seriously, like just God, look out for me, help me because I'm doing it regardless. So you might as well be there for me. Like that's the
Yeah.
prayer that I'm offering up is,
You'll have to come
when
back
I'm doing it,
afterwards
I'm doing it.
because I'm gonna say that I know that you're gonna be fine. You're gonna come back and have a fun story about it.
Let's do
Yes.
that. Let's do that.
Yes.
I like it. I like it.
But guys,
Yeah, man.
again, thank you. It's been a great show. And everybody remember, keep your promos tight and always protect your finish, guys. Have a great night.
My pet peeve in wrestling, man.